Hey everyone, and I'm here today with Joe Caserta. He is the founding CEO of Caserta, a leading data and analytics consulting firm headquartered in New York with clients all over North America. And today Joe has joined us to talk all about challenges facing data pipelines, building of them, and also what are some real world use cases and how people are solving this right now. So Joe, talk to us. What is the challenge around data pipelines? Or if you want to start, what is a data pipeline and why is this necessary?
Sure. Thanks, Remy. Data pipelines are just a way of getting data from point A to point B. And it's the most challenging part of data ecosystems in general. You could have the greatest data model, the greatest data lake, all things around the data for the data could be perfect. But if the data pipelines are not efficient, and if the data pipelines are not constructed correctly, and most importantly, if the data pipelines are not addressing data quality, then it's all really for naught, because not timely, people are not going to wait for them. If they're not creating accurate data, people are just not going to use them. So really baking that in as a foundation for building data pipelines is really the most important thing. And it's really the basics of the book that I wrote 15 years ago on ETL. Yep. So ETL, extract, transform, load. I wrote that book because when you're speaking to executives, I have data here, I want to put it over here. Why is that so hard? And having that over and over and over, when you think somebody needs to put this in writing. And that's how that book was actually created. And a lot has changed. Technologies have changed. Use cases have changed. But the idea of getting data from point A to point B, when point A we know is going to change, and we know point A is going to be multiple A's, and how do we integrate it? How do we come up with data quality methods to get point B to be credible and useful? That's really like the crux of a well-designed data pipeline.
Yeah, that's interesting. Today, with more and more external and alternative sources of data, when a third-party data provider changes perhaps the type or the structure of the data, how do you deal with that? Like, how could a client deal with that when the data changes? What are some tips?
Yeah, so there's two things that happens, especially when you're dealing with external data. The data itself changes, right? So unexpected data anomalies,
right?
Dealing with that. And then the other one is the structure actually changes, right? Years ago when you had control of all of your systems, it was still challenging. But now when you had no control over the data that you're receiving, there's no way to really expect that it's going to stay the same, right? So baked into the design of your data pipelines, you have to accommodate what's called schema drift. So schema drift is when you have a set of structures, and by design, not by design, but by design to handle it, but we have to expect that whoever is sending us that data, they don't care about our needs, right? They care about their needs. And if their needs are to add a row, add a column, change a column, change a label, change some metadata, they're just going to do it. And so it's our job to be able to dynamically handle it. So schema drift handling is knowing what you're expecting, knowing how to test for that expectation, and knowing how to handle it when it actually changes. And then being able to dynamically adjust your data pipeline to adjust for those changes to get the data that you need to where it needs to go.
It's a lot of architecture. And you mentioned metadata. We just had an excellent live presentation in our How to Operationalize Data Governance series all about metadata. So what is the role that data governance plays in data pipelines?
Right, so that is another thing that has changed. When you're in control of your own destiny within your data ecosystem, having a data pipeline and then putting data governance on top of it, not ideal, but achievable. When you have no control over your data and no control over the structures of your data, it's impossible. You can never react fast enough if you're always in a reactive mode. So nowadays, one of the major things that's changed the way Caserta builds pipelines now is we really bake data governance, operationalizing data governance capabilities into the pipeline themselves. So the entire ecosystem from the foundation up is addressing data governance capabilities and hardening it into, baking it into the pipelines and into the ecosystem to handle things like metadata management and data quality assurance, schema drift, information lifecycle management, knowing when to purge things, when to keep things, security, right, built into the fabric of your data ecosystem, all needs to be addressed. Because having a data ecosystem built without that baked in and being able to expect to govern it after the fact, it's a losing battle. You'll never win.
Got it. And how does the cloud play a role in all of this with data pipelines, specifically around the architectures that Caserta designs?
So everything has become modularized now, and we need to be able to have fit for purpose modules within a canonical pipeline. So what we do is we have, there's certain design patterns that we know we're going to need. Things like, ingesting from databases, creating Parquet files, loading slowly changing dimensions in the ultimate relational MPP data warehouse on the cloud. All of these things happen, right? So we build a canonical model, and then we basically plug and play the different modules using either Lambda functions or PySpark or different technologies that were not available years ago, right? That are only available on cloud platforms.
Which would, is there one preference? I know we are vendor agnostic, but one cloud provider that just makes it easier, one tool that makes it easier to really land that data that you would recommend?
Yeah, so there's two ways to think about the term landing with the cloud has evolved, right? So a landing area back in, before the cloud was just a place to ingest all of your data. Nowadays, a landing zone on the cloud is a very different thing. And a landing zone is basically the foundation of what everything else is built upon. And getting that right for a data ecosystem is very different from swiping a credit card and building a cloud platform for an application. So baking in the needs of a data ecosystem into your landing zone, which is the very first thing you do, foundational. It's like when you're building a house, you need to have a sound foundation before you start worrying about designing anything else. So the landing zone is the sound foundation that we need to build. And you need to know when you're building a house, is it a single family home or is it a skyscraper? And then you build the foundation accordingly. If you're building, if you're moving to the cloud purely for applications, you would build one type of landing zone. If you're moving to the cloud for an analytics platform or a data platform, then you build a completely different type of landing zone. And so we specialize really in the second type, is really understanding the difference and the nuances of each cloud, whether it's Google or Amazon or Microsoft or Oracle or IBM, whatever, right? They all have their pros and cons, and they're all great, and they all have their drawbacks. So what we would do, if a client were to engage us to figure out what is the best cloud, is really understand what are the nuances of the requirements of the client, and then help map that to the appropriate cloud that's fit for purpose.
Sure. So we have a lot of off-the-shelf solutions these days, and even a lot of cloud migration shops out there that just promise a quick migration to the cloud. When would you say that's more appropriate, one of these solutions, and when would you say more of a customized, customer-centric approach, Caserta architecture with Caserta frameworks would be more appropriate?
So when you're moving primarily to reduce cost of infrastructure, and you're happy with your applications, and you just want to lift those applications and shift them over to the cloud, hiring a company like Caserta would probably be not worth your while, right? There's lots of fit for purpose commodity, not commodity, but consulting firms that's their specialty. That's what they do. If you are looking to reimagine how your company deals with their data and build an ecosystem that is on the cloud, built from the ground up, whether you're re-engineering your legacy data warehouse or you're imagining something brand new, we would help you imagine it, we would help you architect it, we would help you build it. And that's really, none of the lift and shift cloud migration providers really do it the way Caserta does it.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. Joe Caserta, thank you very much. And to everyone watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the comments below.
Thanks.
Thanks.